Welcome back to Impulse Plays. I am Crazy Carl Winter here with Ben Landstillers. I still don't know how to make that flow well, but he casts Stand Still and counters all your spells and plows your creatures. It's just very rude. How you doing, Ben?
I'm doing great. I got to do a lot of that today,
Yeah,
and now we you watch some more pre-modern, which is
yeah,
always the best.
yeah. We had a 1K here in interesting. I don't want to say lovely Binghamton, New York, but it exists Binghamton, New York, at Dragon Master Games, which has a wonderful play space and very friendly staff and good card selection, and they support great events. So we're gonna look at a couple of decks here today. This is from round two in the 1K. Um, Shout out to Ricky for doing a payout for what was it? We had like 12 players for a 1K. That was super cool of him. And it was just really fun to get some games in. But we have a sweet match here between Black White Control, which I'll toss up on the screen here. This is played by my old buddy Derek. I played Type 1 with Derek 20 years ago. Um, he
Nice.
loves all things prison, and according to Ricky, I did not tell Derek about my stasis deck, but I told Derek about my black white deck, and that's what he wanted to
Mhm.
play. But then Ricky's like, "Why didn't you tell Derek about stasis?" I'm like, "Well, I thought I did. Apparently, I did not. So maybe Derek would have played stasis, but he was into this black white deck. What do you think of this black white control deck, Ben? I think it's pretty sweet.
Yeah, the deck is good. You get to play all the four Vindicates as a typical like blue control player. I absolutely hate facing all of the hand hate, like the
Mm-hmm.
duress and the Gerard's verdict or
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
Yeah.
So this is like the kind of control matchup that I am not looking forward to. Um,
Yes. Yes, for
but I am
sure.
interested to see how this plays against all of your shenanigans.
For sure. Yeah, I'll have the updated deck list in the description, but I think this sideboard here is pretty accurate. There may be one extra Haunting Echoes, not 100% sure, but it's all good. Um,
Nice.
but my favorite card in the deck is Undead Gladiator. It's super inefficient and super bad. Ben was razzing on it on towards me at the beginning of the video before we started recording, and I felt bad, but I still love
Hmm.
Undead Gladiator. It's so good.
Yeah.
You can
Four
discard
mana Merfolk Looter seems
super efficient. It's very much up the alley of pre-modern.
seems great. But at least you're balanced by having four dragons, four angels,
Mm-hmm.
and the ability to make more angels with
Yes.
probably the best card in the deck, Decree of Justice.
It's up there for sure. Maybe you should splash Standstill. I don't know. But let's move into TrevAluren, which is very heavily inspired by Francisco Polishchuk. I think I'm gonna mess up his last name, but Fran's a great dude. He's a very good deck builder. He advocates for playing good cards instead of bad cards, and I took that I want to say to the extreme. But his early versions of the deck had Rashad and Cutpurse instead of one of these mana wars,
Hmm.
which I don't know that I like. I'm not sure. What do you think about this Lurin deck, Ben? I like the Sylvan libraries a lot with the shuffle effects.
Yeah, you can really overload like what this is the thing that matters, right? With library plus survival plus Allurin.
Mm-hmm.
It can be if you're an unfamiliar opponent, like knowing what to counter, what
Mm-hmm.
matters in the matchup can be really tricky.
Yeah.
Um, and I think the answer is that they all kind of matter at least a bit. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially Allurin for that combo kill.
Yeah, and the fact that Lurin lets you play creatures as instants at flash speed or however you want to refer to it as makes it very tricky to interact with. If you know the deck and you know how the combos work, there are interaction points, but there is redundancy that can be built into different scenarios that can kind of negate your opponent's interaction. So the long story short of how this deck works is you want to land an alluring at some point. After you land that alluring, you want to cast a Raven Familiar, which is like a mini impulse attached to a 1/2 flyer. You will then cast a Cavern Harpy, bouncing the Raven Familiar. You will then cast Raven Familiar and then bounce your Cavern Harpy using its -1 life ability to replay it after you bounce it to your hand, bouncing back to Raven Familiar, cast Raven Familiar again. And the idea is you get to search through a ton of cards until you get to Manowar and Spike Feeder, at which point you can gain infinite life by bouncing the Manowar with the Cavern Harpy. The Manowar will bounce your Spike Feeder after you gain 2 life, and then you just repeat that ad infinitum until you have a bazillion life. At which
Mm.
point you can then play a Wall of Roots, and instead of bouncing the Spike Feeder, you bounce the Wall of Roots after making a green mana. You generate infinite green mana, and then you can put the 1/1 counters on the Spike Feeder rather than removing a counter to gain a life. You can remove a counter to put a +1/+1 counter onto a creature and make any number of your creatures infinitely large. This does,
Mhm.
however, require you to pass the turn, which can be very scary. To address that, there's meddling mages. You can play meddling mage on like Wrath of God or Infest or whatever.
Mhm.
That doesn't always get you there. Previous versions of the deck, as I mentioned, played Rashad and Cutpurse, so you can do that whole loop, but you have Rashad and Cutpurse instead, which is a 3 mana 1/1 ETB. Opponent pays 1 or sacks a permanent. So you just do that a bazillion times and they sack all their permanents. You
That
probably
does
want that
seem
shit.
powerful.
It is quite powerful, but Rashad and Cutpurse on its own does nothing, whereas
Mm.
Mana War does something. Not always relevant, but it's almost always good in some ways. So
I see.
yeah, I don't know if it was right to play the third mana war. I think it was a little bit greedy. You lose a very particular combo line by doing that, but yeah, it's probably fine. Whatever that case might be, the deck is sweet. You get to play mini impulse in a combo deck, which is great.
Yeah,
Um,
impulse bird
impulse word.
representing.
Yep, for sure, for sure. So let's get into this black white control match versus Allurin combo. Black white typically has a very hard time with combo decks because it doesn't react very well, right? Like you don't have the same tools as like land still, right, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, it seems if your opponent has the pieces in hand, it seems like it's got some game there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you like duress and
Black,
take away the allure or the survival of the fittest, right?
right? But like things off the top, it doesn't really have a way to, has no means of really interacting on the stack with anything, which can be
Right.
challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. The interesting about the learn deck as opposed to like full English breakfast is that, like I said, there are interaction points. So like if you cast the Raven Familiar and then you try and cast the Cavern Harpy, if the black white player responds to the Cavern Harpy by plowing the Raven Familiar,
Hmm.
unless there's another way to bounce that Raven Familiar, there's no way to have a draw engine, so your deck just stops. Um,
Right.
so I have a good start with the Allure deck on a Birds of Paradise. Phyrexian Furnace is great against survival decks because it removes the squee. Um,
Yep.
but oh, I don't know if you noticed here, Ben. There is no second land drop here from the Allure side.
That's that's right. Well, you have two birds and a wall of roots, so who needs lands?
Exactly, exactly, and
And and notably, Allurin costs 4 mana,
it sure
and you
does. And I
can
have access to
out of
5. Yeah. Okay, so it looks like I'm generating a mana with Wall of Roots, and I cast a turn
there's the Allure.
3 Allurin,
Oh, jeez.
which for black white, he can cast Undead Gladiator, which is something.
You
Looks
mean
like
cycle undead gladiator? Doesn't he cost 3 mana?
yeah, yeah. So I cast a
Uh
Raven Familiar here.
oh, jeez. Yeah.
So
No
this would
disadvantage.
yeah. This I don't think it was a Dischance main deck, but this could be an interaction point. So if I do have the Cavern Harpy, um, he could plow in response to the Cavern Harpy to get rid of the Raven Familiar. And
Looks like a cycling eternal dragon gonna pick up a plane.
yeah. The two of us were not great about keeping everything on camera here, but yeah, he's got the Eternal Dragon cycle.
If you pass the turn, there's a good chance Zolarian gets vindicated here, right?
100%, yeah, 100%. Or the Raven Familiar. I guess you don't hit the Raven Familiar because that seems atrocious. Yeah, hitting the 4 mana enchantment with your 3 mana sorcery is probably way better. But I don't see a Vindicate in his hand.
Well,
Passing
this
on turn 3 is not
land
great.
land
Yeah,
go seems
yeah,
not promising.
yeah. And again, Phyrexian Furnace is great against Survival of the Fittest because it shuts down Squee, but this is just a Lurin in play, and Phyrexian Furnace is not doing anything against a Lurin. Looks like I have a Spike Feeder and a Survival of the Fittest. Doing the quick math in my head, this should be a kill, paying the Echo on the Raven Familiar. Um, it may not be now, but it might be next turn. Although I think I just drew
You still
Cavern.
need the harpy, right?
I just drew Cavern Harpy. Yeah, I was gonna say
Oh,
I can cast
Luxec
Survival.
Carl, Cavern Harpy off the top.
Pretty much, pretty much. I learned from Luxec Ben, as we call him, so it's
That's right.
how we go. But I could have cast Survival and
Oh,
then
you
gone for it
you
next
you
turn.
just go for survival as
Yeah,
well.
I had the survival, so I can use the Wall of Roots next turn to get mana. But here he cycles a decree. Yeah, not
Right?
not a whole
Urgency
lot to do.
cycle.
Okay, so at the end of its turn, I cast the Cavern Harpy, bouncing the familiar, and then I recast the familiar, which I didn't put it in play because I'm being lazy apparently. Raven Familiar gives you a mini impulse, so Impulse Bird lets you draw a bunch of cards. I'm demonstrating to Derek how I basically lose a life to look at 3 cards and take one. Not doing a good job of using the phone to keep track of life, but at this point, I think I had 19 or 18 life to work with. So that means I can look at 17 times 3, so 51 cards. Probably can get there with that, right?
Probably.
Yeah. Oh, I got another Wall of Roots, yeah. So that opens up survival to search for cards that I need. So it lets me get the spike feeder and or the Manowar.
Mhm.
Thank you, Past Carl, for putting the creatures where
This
they
is this is
belong
this is notably going at instant speed.
at my end of
Half
turn. Yeah.
cycle, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hey, right on your end of turn,
Exactly. Yeah, because he cycled, so he has no mana open. So, um,
right?
short of him having Snuff Out, which I don't, I honestly didn't remember at this point if there was in the deck or not. It's usually not, but he can't plow, which is super important. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, I played something that I don't see. Okay, there's a Spike Feeder. So
Spike Peter. Oh,
now,
there. Now you just have the infinite life combo.
yep. So I demonstrate the loop of bouncing Spike Feeder with the Mana War, gaining infinite life, drawing as many cards as I need to with the Raven Familiar, generate infinite mana with the Wall of Roots, making creatures infinitely large, and then I can get meddling mages out of my deck with either survival or drawing cards. Although I think I just was lazy and just made all my stuff big.
Right? You can just get wogged here.
I can. The problem for Derek is I can then bounce Cavern Harpy, play it, bounce Mana War, and then just do that cycle with my entire
Oh,
board,
yeah.
bouncing back to my
Oh,
hand, and then replay it all after the Wrath of God resolves, and then attack him for a gajillion mana damage. So,
mhm.
um, he's
Yeah.
got
All those
duress. Yeah,
instant speed creatures and abilities, making it
hmm
hard to interact.
yeah. So he's just dead there. I attack for 286 billion damage with each of my creatures. So, um,
That's very specific amount. Very high.
I try to be. I try to be. You don't want to be. You don't want to be ambiguous when you're playing Magic the Gathering. It's a very
That's
specific and
right. You do
and
you do
strategic
have
game.
to stop your loop
Mm-hmm.
at some point.
Which again, not having Rashad and Cut Purse means you can't just like permanent lock your opponent. You have to actually kill them. So like the turn has to get passed at some point so you can like get in there and kill them. But I
Hmm.
see a Swords of Plowshares in Derek's hand. I also see an Exalted Angels. That means he can put out early damage and destroy. Oh, he's 2 plows. That's not
Yeah,
bad. Does he have a
what do
white
you think
source? Yeah.
what do you think he's bringing in here?
Uh, Probably Engineered Plague to stop Cavern Harpy. Maybe some
Yeah,
disenchant
plague on
effects.
beast is pretty good there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can do it on Beast. You could also, in a pinch, you can do it on like Bird. It doesn't stop Raven Familiar, but if you play 2 of them, you can stop the Raven Familiars with that. But yeah, Beast is a really good call. Yeah.
Right.
All right, so my hand
For listeners that don't
is
know, that gives creatures -1/-1 of the chosen type.
yes, exactly. All right, he's got a plow for the Birds of Paradise, so that's pretty good. Plow the Bird is as good as bolting the bird. Got some sweet Mercadian Masks lands better than my Tempest lands.
Did you bring in the monk realist against these black decks for that
I
scenario?
typically do. I don't think I did in this match because I'm bad.
Okay,
Yeah,
just checking.
yeah. But I got a Walrus in turn 2, which is pretty good. Derek does not have a Vindicate, which is good for me. He does not notably plow the Wall of Roots.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know if that's going to be bad for him or not, but killing the Manadorks against survival decks is generally pretty good. Yeah, so I get the survival out
Mm-hmm.
here on turn 3. And
Right,
Dirk
just in terms of,
passes.
I guess the right two factors for that mana constraint, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you can either play survival and not activate it, um, if you remove the wall. Also, like you're just one land drop away from jamming Allurin, which is
Terrifying.
big scary.
Yeah. So I go for the squee, which then I can discard to survival. I think it was in PSS recently. I remember hearing somebody talk about a lot of people playing survival decks will often go for their squee, then not discard it on the turn they get for it because they don't have enough mana. So you're not really
Mm-hmm.
generating any advantage there. So that's just something to keep in mind with your survival of the fittest. Like you want to get your squee when you use it right away when you're going to bring it back on the next upkeep. Of course, there's
Mm-hmm.
sometimes where you're just going to sit around and durdle anyway, so whatever. But just something you can think about. Got my nice played. I got my mana war. So I guess my thought here is to bounce the Exalted Angel, right?
Yeah. Seems like it
Let's.
might buy you some time.
That is tempo dot play. I think 3 mana for 3 mana. I have an Allure in my hand though. I don't think I have a fourth mana.
No, not yet.
Hmm.
You have a bird you could play to set up for next turn.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, you don't really care about this angel, do you?
I don't know that I do. Yeah. I think you're probably right. I did just okay. So just survival to the squee. Got a birds, and I have a birds in my hand. Um. I don't know why I just didn't just play that birds. I don't know why I question past Carl. Past Carl is almost always worse than present Carl.
And present- that just means you're getting better all the time.
Nothing can stop my power.
Maybe you just wanna hold that other bird as another survival pitch target.
Almost
Get your combo
certainly.
off the
Yeah.
ground.
Post board, I almost always bring
I
in Auramancer. I mean, it's all the
right.
damage gets in. Yep.
So I think here you're looking to this is a fine play. You're setting up for 4 mana so you can drop the Allurin, and you want to have multiple creatures so you can get all your combo pieces.
Right. And it's not likely he's going to Wrath of God with Exalted Angel play, right? Like,
There goes that bird.
yeah, Rickbird. Like, you don't spend 7 mana to put a 4/5 pseudo lifelinker in play to then just Wrath of God it away, right?
I mean,
I mean,
generally not, but
maybe you do. I don't know.
it depends on how many 12/12 tramplers on the opposite side of the field.
Yeah, it depends on the turn in which everything comes into play because that Exalted Angel can race that 12/12 sometimes. Like, 8 life swings are not nothing. All right, so I get
Not
a
wrong.
Cavern Harpy, bring back the Squee. Um, okay, cast Allurin. So notable thing here is I leave the Birds of Paradise untapped because it does not
Oh, you
have.
have the bird.
I do have
Oh
the bird, so
wow.
it's not summoning sick, which means if I can generate infinite mana, infinite life, I can then
Oh, you can
move
attack
all the
the
spike.
bird of paradise. Oh
Exactly, yeah.
wow.
You can pump up the Bird of Paradise and just swing in for Hosilian. So I'm demonstrating I'm starting the loop now with Cavern Harpy and Raven Familiar. I've got a ton of life to work with. Like 3 cards per life is a lot of cards per life.
Mhm.
So I'm just kind of going through the motions. I really need to look for like I have Mana War, so I
The
just need.
mage.
Yeah, there's a mage. I need to get a Spike Feeder. He lets the mage resolve.
It don't really have a choice in black white.
Not so much. I mean, he can plow in response. But really at this point, with everything that's going on, I don't know. He has plow in his hand, but
You have to
I hit plow
yeah,
with the
okay.
belly beast.
That's
But
good. Yeah.
he didn't really have any interaction points that were meaningful because like he could try and stop me from bouncing my Raven Familiar with the Cavern Harpy, but I had the Manowar
Right.
in my hand, so I could just cast the Manowar in response to the Raven Familiar or the Cavern Harpy,
Oh, and
bounce
anyway,
the Raven
yeah.
Familiar, and then when the Cavern Harpy resolves, I bring back the Manowar, and then I just continue on my merry way.
It's all rolled up over there.
Pretty much, pretty much. Yeah, he does not really have anything he can do at this point. So like technically
Just
speaking, slight error from Derek's point of not casting Source Plowshares here, but I had the
mhm.
redundancy, and there was just not really anything he could do.
Right, just the face up the face up counterplay to that, I suppose.
He either dies this turn or next
Yeah.
turn. It doesn't matter.
And the black white deck didn't really get to show its stuff off that match very much.
No. Derek did get to do one of his favorite things, which is Morph Exalted Angel. It was unfortunately not terribly effective. Squeezing some air out of my sleeves. Haunting Echoes, Akroma's Vengeance. Those are both
Um,
reasonable cards. Yep.
it's good.
Run Oromancer, the last Meddling Mage, because stopping like Plow is really good. Gilded Drake against
Electric. I'm just gonna
Exalted Angel.
steal
Yeah,
steal some angels over there.
yeah, definitely, definitely.
Seems good.
Okay, so he brought in Disenchant, and I think this is something I discussed with him after the match was over. Like the way he sideboarded is pretty much fine, but bringing in, he didn't realize that Engineer Plague shuts off the Alluring combo, because if you play, like you mentioned earlier, you play Engineer Plague on Beast, you can't loop anymore. Did
Right, Cavern Harpy comes into play and immediately dies.
Exactly. Did you happen to see a monk realist in there? I don't think I did.
I don't think you brought it in.
Okay, so what I'm seeing
You're
is
like the next level crazy Carl Winter strategy.
uh
My opponent's not going to bring in his cards, so I don't need to bring in my card. That's
I think what you mean to say is
that's quite
I am
strong.
bad at the game and don't know how to sideboard correctly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you,
I
you just
wouldn't
misphrased
say
it.
that.
You just misphrased it. That's fine. Totally should have brought in monk realist
This
there.
is you're making me question that you're the person I go to for sideboarding advice, Carl. I'm just
I have never claimed to be a person to go for sideboarding wise, but anyway, I should have brought in Monk Realist. I should have expected Engineer Plague. I frankly got lucky that Derek is super new to pre-modern. This is his first event. First time playing with Black White. So he just didn't know about the Engineer Plague, but he could have also not drawn. I don't know. I got lucky there. We saw the draws. I had like what I have a learn on turn 3 both games, maybe turn 4. Like
yeah, with all the combo pieces that you needed to
exactly,
go off.
exactly. It's super specific
It's an
cards I needed.
impressive showing from the Alluring deck. Looks like a lot of fun.
It is super sweet. It is super sweet. And Derek did the best he could there. I mean, there's really not like there were a lot, not again, not a lot of interaction points he could have meaningfully done anything in, but um, he did his best. He was a good sport about everything. I apologized for being such a luck sack, and he's a gentleman, so he
As you
accepted it and moved
should.
on. Exactly, exactly. Oh boy, yeah, what a fun match! What a fun match! A great event too. Hopefully we can see some folk come out and join us. Um, yeah, thanks for watching, and you are welcome to subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Feel free to comment on how lucky I am or how sweet the Mercadian Mask foil lands are.
They
Um,
are beautiful. Both decks really showing off strong.
no doubt. And other comments are acceptable as well, but those are the two I prefer. Thanks again for watching, and for Ben and I, have a great rest of the day, and